like to take a moment to give a very special thanks to our wonderful sponsors for this program, including premier sponsor SAG Indy, university partner Loyola Marymount University School of Film and Television, and supporting sponsor Mississippi Film Office. We are really pleased to welcome Ashok Amritraj to the forum for his vast international experience spanning 35 years will resonate with our wide global audience. Offering an alternative to the traditional Hollywood system, his company, Hyde Park Entertainment Group, is one of the leading independent companies known for pushing the boundaries of diversity and inclusion in cinema across a vast slate of feature film, television, documentary, and local language content, which have received multiple awards, including Oscars, BAFTAs, Emmys, and Film Independent Spirit Awards too. In addition to his high-profile Hollywood projects, Hyde Park has recently opened offices in South Asia, where they will be launching a slate of films by acclaimed filmmakers from the region. The format of the keynote will be a conversation moderated by Manori Ravindran, international editor of Variety, who is joining us from London. Welcome both of you. Manori, take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's really wonderful to be here, and thank you very much for the Film Independent Forum for having me. It's a real pleasure, and I have to say it's just incredible to be speaking with Ashok because so much admiration for all of your work. As Maria says, this is a career spanning 35 years, a second career after obviously the initial your initial turn as a pro tennis player. And you know, such a long, I think if we went through all of Ashok's credits, we would be here for the duration of this period and perhaps longer. But some of the films that you've been a part of, 99 Homes, Blue Valentine, Double Impact, Ghost Rider. I mean, it's an incredible portfolio, and we will get into all of this. But you know, I just sort of wanted to start a little bit about, you know, we'll kind of go right to the beginning in terms of you know, your life in India, obviously, before moving over to the U.S. You were born there, you went to school there, university there. Can you tell us a little bit about you know, your kind of early years growing up there?
First, let me thank Maria. You know, it's great to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to wish all our viewers during this time a very good health to them and their loved ones during this, you know, very difficult period. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you, and I'd like to, first of all, also congratulate Film Independent for the wonderful work they do with independent cinema and encouraging independent filmmakers. You know, I grew up in a city called Chennai in India. It used to be called Madras. When I was born and raised there, went to school and college, but started playing tennis at a very young age, which was quite unusual in India. My mother was a big tennis fan, so she put us into the sport. She was an extraordinary woman. Was a great businesswoman as well as a tennis fan. She put my brothers and me into it, wanting to keep us out of trouble. But we became good and became the first professional athletes out of India. And it was fascinating because my mother's father, my grandfather, always wanted one of us to play at Wimbledon. And all through the 70s, all three of us played at Wimbledon, so it was absolutely wonderful. But growing up in India, you know, India has always been very much of a country that loves the movies. And if you didn't find me on the tennis courts, my mother used to always say, "You found me in the movie theater." Must have seen Sound of Music 33 times, and Ben-Hur and Graduate, and you know, all the movies of that time. Which were absolutely wonderful. So tennis took me out of the country, you know, at a very young age. While I would always go back to India, it's, you know, always been very much a part of my life. But tennis was a terrific entree into the world, and it took me to various countries around the world, brought me to play in Wimbledon at the US Open and so on. And in 1974, when I reached the finals of the Wimbledon Juniors, a gentleman called Jerry Buss, who then went on to own the LA Lakers and so on, brought me out to LA to play for the Los Angeles tennis team. He had created World Team Tennis along with Billie Jean King and Larry King. So it was a great opportunity. You know, coming to Southern California was a dream, especially, you know, in the mid 70s. So it was great, and that's what brought me out to LA. You know, and my love for the industry sort of ended up keeping me here. Though I continued playing tennis all through the 70s, it was an extraordinary decade with people like Connors and Arthur Ashe, who we are making a movie on today, and so on and so forth.
And I mean, what can you take us through? What accounted for that pivot? Obviously, you were in LA, obviously, and then at a certain point you decided. I know that you've sort of, you had visited all of the studios and you'd kind of,
Yes.
surveyed the scene. What made you sort of make that pivot, I suppose, to actually decide, okay, I'm going to try my hand and actually actively participate in this industry?
Yeah, I started playing at the Forum here, playing tennis. It was called the Fabulous Forum at that time. It was wonderful. I had many people from the industry who came out to watch me play. And again, I always knew that the entertainment industry was where I wanted to end up. I had hoped to get to make a movie one day. So when I got to LA, you're right, I dropped off my bags, got in a cab, visited all these studios that I, dreamed about and heard so much about growing up in India. There used to be this little legend that came up saying, when you're in Southern California, visit Universal Studios. So going to all these studios was a dream, but I continued to play tennis till 1980 and made a lot of great friends in the industry. And I figured in 1981, I thought I was ready to take the plunge, and it was a lot of sleepless nights, but obviously one of the big decisions that one has to make in life. There were no Indian producers in Hollywood at that time. Well, there were hardly any. I don't think there were any Indians in Hollywood at that time. So it was really no path to follow, so to speak. And I did make the decision. I went into the entertainment industry, and for the next 4 or 5 years was some of the toughest years of my life. I must say, I was invited to play in a lot of tennis games at a lot of executives and stars' homes because they loved seeing a brown Wimbledon tennis player on their courts. But I think, and I look good on their courts, but they didn't quite want to make a movie with me. So for the next 5 years, I'd send my scripts around, and 2 weeks later, when I called them up, an executive at a studio, I'd call him up, and he'd come on the phone immediately, and he'd say, oh, tell me about my forehand or my backhand or my second serve. And after we went through 15 minutes of that, I'd say, well, I sent you a script about 2 weeks ago. And he'd say, oh yeah, we passed on that, a long time ago. So it was one of those things until about 1985 when I decided to go independent and raised $500,000 through friends and so on, and ended up going out and making my first movie. And that was sort of the start of my independent film career. The 80s was a fascinating time for independent cinema because, the many of your viewers, I think, are probably too young to remember this, but VHS and Betamax were coming around. The video market was coming around. So it was a fascinating time for independent cinema, and there were wonderful independent film companies. And after making 2 or 3 small films, I was introduced through an agent, I was introduced to Roger and Julie Corman. And I ended up making 6 movies with Roger, which was absolutely a great learning experience. And it was a time between 1985 and 1990 when I sort of cut my teeth and learned everything from how to develop a script to casting to production to where cameras go and what happens in post-production and how to deliver a film. So I really sort of understood filmmaking coming out of that, made about 20 movies during that time for HBO and Showtime and Roger and various other entities. So it was a terrific, great experience learning at that time.
And then, of course, you had your big break, and I mean, I think I could classify it as that. But
Yeah.
Obviously, in 1991, Double Impact. That's how did you sort of make that leap from sort of some of those smaller films to the Double Impact? Like, I mean, can you take us through that kind of specific trajectory?
Yeah. In 1984, I was sitting in my little office, and I got this 8x10 photograph, and I looked at it, and it was a very interesting looking actor, and there was a phone number at the bottom. I was a little bit of an out of work producer. So I call up the number, this actor comes over, and really good looking guy, and we start talking. He doesn't speak English super well. So I said, what do you do? He said, I act. I said, well, what do you do for a living? He said, well, I drive limos. So I said, okay. He said, should we make a movie? I said, sure. We go around town, and our movie gets passed on by everybody. 6 years later, 1990, I'm sitting at the Cannes Film Festival at the Carlton Hotel, and this guy comes running up to me, and he says, Ashok, out of 800 photographs I sent out, you were the only guy who called me back. We should make a movie together. And that was Jean-Claude Van Damme, and we made this movie, Double Impact, which went on to become a big hit. And that sort of, for both of us, it was a big break. It took me into the studio world. It was released by Columbia Pictures in the US, domestically, and internationally it was sold by a wonderful international sales agent, Mark Damon, who had a company called Vision at that time, and it was still quasi-independently financed. And that was a period of time when I started to learn a lot about indie financing and putting together movies and learning how the pieces of the puzzle fit together.
Sure. And then what was it like, kind of off the success of Double Impact, making the next film after that? How did you sort of navigate your success and sort of harness it to make that next big film? Yeah,
again, the 90s was a terrific time still for independent film. The studios hadn't quite figured out the international market yet, in that while they released movies, it wasn't quite a day and date release. They were still selling off foreign rights. They were still looking for co-financiers and producers. So through the 90s, I started to craft deals where with wonderful actors, wonderful directors, where I was able to start to partner with studios. And then towards the latter part of the 90s, I formed Hyde Park Entertainment, which was specifically to partner with studios. And I made a deal with MGM and with Disney, first and second look deals. And then we made a bunch of movies together. But most of those movies were co-financed, where we handled the foreign rights or a large portion of the foreign rights, and then the studio handled the domestic rights. And then we worked through, tax rebates and various other things that were able to fund bank loans and so on. So basically the movies got bigger, the stars got bigger, and it was an extraordinary time for cinema because the movies that were in the $30–40 million range that I made, whether it was Spring Down the House with Steve Martin or, Original Sin with Angelina Jolie and Walking Tall with The Rock, and, all of these movies, today, I think, as you look around, those $30–40–50 million movies have a tougher marketplace, and the independent cinema marketplace has gotten more complicated because of the OTT channels, Netflix and Amazon and Apple and so on. But we can talk about that a bit more. But the 90s was an amazing time for cinema because independent film was prospering. People were going to the movies to see these $30–40 million films, and they were going in droves. And that continued till about 2005, 2006, and almost to 2008 when you had the financial kind of meltdown. But as you went along, the studios started to understand the international market more and started to realize the value of international box office. You know, when I came here to LA in the 70s, you know, and in the early 80s, getting into cinema, I always used to think, because people used to kind of, you know, friends of mine, you know, used to think India was all about the Peter Sellers accent and the head nod, you know. So, but to me, it was more a lack of knowledge than it was anything else, you know. So I always figured, listen, if somebody's growing up in Beverly Hills and his longest plane trip is taken is to Manhattan, you know, I've got to be able to do well in this environment, coming from India and being of, you know, globally aware of what is going on around the world. So it's one of those things you use it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, would you say that that has been the advantage ultimately, your kind of global expertise, you know, being able to sort of finance these projects with, you know, Singapore or various, various all around the world, where, you know, the US perhaps does, or at the time, I guess, had a much more narrow mindset, and ultimately Hyde Park has been able to, you know, piece together these very complex financing puzzles while also just making sure that you're, you know, that you are accounting for all of this money and able to stand up these projects, right, on an international level.
Yeah, I think being aware of the global marketplace has always been one of the advantages that I've had. And, I think it's something that I've been able to use very well. It's also I've been able to sort of evolve with the marketplace, you know, from those days of VHS and Betamax to DVDs to the international cable market to you know, German tax shelters, or whatever they may be. We've been, and then partnering with studios, and then other movies where we made them completely independently, movies that we financed fully and only distributed through a studio. One of my most successful movies, Premonition, which I made with Sandy Bullock, was distributed by Columbia Pictures, but we financed it 100%. So all of these different ways, Street Fighter was similarly, we financed the film, but 20th Century Fox distributed it in the US, we distributed it nationally. I think the global awareness and the idea of using the global marketplace, including domestic, of course, has been really terrific. And also focusing on what an international audience wants and what the global audience looks like, you know, has been a very important part of what it is. I think to our viewers, I would say one of the most important things is to gather all the knowledge you can about the marketplace. You know, whether it's the television sales in Germany or in the UK, or what Sky B is doing, or what a TF1 in France is doing, and so on and so forth. So you get to understand and you have enough knowledge, even though the marketplace may change, how things evolve over time and how you can have the flexibility to move with that.
I'm also curious, Ashok, in terms of, you know, I mean, you've spoken about this before, but obviously when you're starting out, you know, in the 80s and Hollywood, and kind of being the only, you know, South Asian person basically knocking on these doors, how do you sort of feel around this current climate right now, in terms of this reckoning that Hollywood seems to be having around race and ethnicity, and kind of really, seemingly, at least on the outside, really carefully considering its relationship with people of color in the industry? Do you feel as though there is going to be tangible change going forward, or is this lip service? I mean, like, are there going to be more opportunities for future Ashok Amritrajes, for example, or people that look like both of us, for example? In the future? What is the way forward?
Listen, it's been coming a long time. You know, when I started in the 80s, you know, I've always tried to be a bridge between Hollywood and India. And the logo for my company is a London Bridge. You know, which carries many things for me. You know, both from the days of my tennis days as well as, you know, building that bridge across countries and industries, both entertainment-wise and culturally. You know, but the change has been coming for a while. Over the last 10, 15 years, it's sped up because of the internet and the global connections and global travel and all of those things. It has really, I think over the last 5 to 7 years, because of Netflix and because of Amazon and all of these OTT companies, I will give them a tremendous amount of credit for democratizing their platform, you know, putting things with subtitles out there, putting a lot of wonderful global programming on their platforms, which is great. And that's led to this sort of wave of wonderful programming from foreign countries, whether it be Sacred Games from India, Dark from Germany, you know, Narcos, you know, all of these things that now have a global audience, you know. And I think that has been terrific. What's happened over the last couple of years and now recently is I love watching this happen. It's what I had worked towards and hoped would happen. It's wonderful how it's picked up. I serve on the Diversity and Inclusion Academy at the Academy, and one of the great things that the Academy has done has been so inclusive in allowing foreign membership into the Academy, which, you know, in 10 years ago was kind of unheard of. You know, you didn't look at foreign filmmakers. So it's terrific to have that sort of inclusion because they feel a part of the film industry here in Hollywood and globally. But I do think change is coming. We certainly are not there. I think the bridge that's happening right now with finally big corporations, big companies being aware that they do need diversity, they do need to hire people of color, black, brown, whatever, that sort of reflects the world that we live in, you know. So I definitely feel it's coming. I would love to see more box office winners that are, because that always, making money always has corporations thinking that that it's a good way to go. So while on a social level, they are becoming socially aware, I think economically, they haven't yet quite understood how important it is as well, because that is should be part and parcel of this. But I do think change is coming, and I think over the next 5 to 10 years is not only change for diverse filmmakers, for people around the world, but I just think it's a great opportunity in time for content providers, there are a lot of buyers, you know, whether it's the traditional independent marketplace, there are certain sources of filmmaking and monies to make independent cinema, but there's also the OTT platforms who are making movies like Roma and so on. So I think it's a great time for filmmakers.
I mean, as a member, because you're sitting on this board, the Diversity and Inclusion Board, are you able to talk about some of the changes that we might see for the Oscars? I mean, albeit they're delayed for next year, but what sort of, can you shed light on how we might even see some of those changes as early as next year? Because I understand they're sort of going through a little bit of a review in terms of how these awards are.
As far as the Academy goes, which is more of an organization as far as filmmakers who get to share ideas, and there are mentorships, and there are a lot of opportunities. I think the main thing about it is that the membership has opened up to foreign filmmakers. You know, that, 10 years ago, I mean, I think when I joined the Academy in 1992, I was the only Indian filmmaker in the Academy at that time. And I think there was I forget the percentage, but a very small percentage of people were diverse. And so today that has changed dramatically. I know there's been the A2020 at the Academy, and now there's an Aperture 2025. So the steps being done by the Academy, I think, is wonderful, because it's an encouragement to foreign filmmakers who are doing well to join Hollywood filmmakers and filmmakers from around the world. And that kind of an organization is crucial, I think, to just uplifting of morale and just an exchange of ideas and all of those things. But more importantly, I think it's the Warner Brothers and Universal and all of these people who have become aware of in the Netflix and Amazons, that how important it is to be diverse and inclusive in executives, at the agency level, at the writing and directing level, I mean, just at every level possible, and hopefully that'll expand and grow. It's the starting point. To what you just said, we are not there at all. It is a starting point, and I would hope that everybody will really pay attention to it.
I mean, and sort of looking forward as well, you launched Hyde Park Entertainment Asia, that was last year. Very interesting sort of slate as well, initially focusing on seemingly Indian stories. I mean, have you had some of these studios sort of come and, like, I know obviously you guys have a very exciting kind of slate of projects as well, but do you find perhaps more interest from the studio side in terms of working with you, a truly international sort of outfit going forward?
It's I've always had a foot in both worlds. It's always been part of my upbringing. It's part of my DNA. I'm before COVID, I was in India every 10 to 12 weeks. So and I keep in very close touch with the country. So it was organic, the product that we are making in India. We have films, television, animation, and local language now. We're very broad-based to keep up with the changing world. I think in film and in animation, we have a movie called Pashmina, which we are doing with Netflix, with Gurinder Chadha is directing. We hope it will be an Indian-American version of Coco. Rahman is doing the music. It's absolutely tremendous. We have, with Anurag Kashyap, we have Sacred Games. Sorry, not Sacred Games. We have Maximum City, which is Suketu Mehta's book. And Paradise Towers is another one, which was written by Shweta Bachchan, Amitabh's daughter. And we're in partnership with Zoya Akhtar on that one. So we have wonderful global product that is for a global audience that is in the English language. And we have Indian local language series and films that wonderful Indian filmmakers are making. So we have that. And then, of course, we have the traditional Hollywood side of films that we continue to make, like The 99 Homes and so on. We're doing a movie called Remote Control with Jerry Butler and, all of that. So what excites me is making different kinds of movies with different filmmakers and young filmmakers and some who are established. So it's great fun to be able to do all of that.
And it's interesting because Pashmina is obviously for Netflix. Yes. I understand Maximum City could also be for a global streaming platform, perhaps
Could be.
Netflix.
Could be, yes, could be. We're making it as a series of 3 films.
Okay.
And yes, it could be certainly, Anurag is, of course, a very talented filmmaker, writer and director. And he's writing and directing the writing as we speak. So we'll see. We'll see where it lands.
I mean, it's something, just to sort of echo something that you said previously as well about the streamers and their opening up of very diverse storytelling. I mean, I'm just thinking of something like Mindy Kaling's Never Have I Ever, which obviously told such a poignant sort of Indian American story over obviously in series form. But it was such a nuanced kind of idea that I feel only we could have really seen on an SVOD in some ways, which is a little bit sad too.
Yes.
But in a way, it's quite amazing to sort of see this opening up of opportunities. I think for really properly seeing people of color on screen telling just
Very
normal
much so.
stories as well.
Yeah. Mindy did a great job with the show. The young girl, I know my daughter Priya, who was following the show, just had a Zoom call with Maya Treyi, who's the young girl, who's a talented actress, it's great to see all of the different kinds of programming out there. Some for a global audience, some for the local audience, some for just an Asian audience. So this is something that is quite amazing that has come from the OTT platforms. I would venture to say, if it even wasn't for them, in a way, Parasite wouldn't have won the Oscar. We get used to reading subtitles, as Director Bong said last time. Those 1-inch things at the bottom of the screen that we all get to read. And Parasite, which is such an extraordinary movie, for it to win an Oscar in the traditional category is amazing. It's amazing, and I think this is that kind of time period where it's open season. That's why, to filmmakers, good movies in any language seems to speak to an audience these days.
And for you as well, and for Hyde Park, increasingly going, with your future projects, would you say that your development slate is largely catered towards the SVOD market at this point, rather than the more traditional?
I think in our, when I look at our upcoming movies, we have a movie with a company called STX, which is the Terry Butler movie. We have a movie with Studio Canal, which is a European company, with a wonderful director. We have we have a movie with Netflix. So we are, quite frankly, I think it's all mutually, it's not mutually exclusive. For us, I think one should look at the world these days and say, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to film, TV, I'm going to work with studios when I can, I'm going to work with Netflix and Amazon, I'm going to do films independently, I'm going to make 99 Homes, which was totally independently financed, and we sort of did it for a, first of all for a festival audience, and then it kind of grew from there. Earlier, I've always made those films as well. So Shop Girl, which I made with Steve Martin, which Claire Danes starred in, was also one of those kinds of movies which we did purely out of just love and passion for that kind of a project. Everybody had turned it down, as was the case with 99 Homes. So we will always continue to make those movies. We would also make studio films and movies with Netflix, and we certainly will encourage the local language side of our business as well.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, and obviously, just because we're in that period now, where thankfully, at least outside of the U.S. And probably outside of India, to be fair, at this point too, but we're looking towards a recovery process out of COVID-19. Certainly in Europe, I'm based in London. There's some forward motion at long last in terms of productions getting started again. What have you guys been doing over this period? I mean, something like Pashmina, obviously, presumably, and animation production. Was that sort of, has that been ticking along during this period? What other productions have you been able to you know, to kind of...
You know, listen, it's a complicated time, you know. It's a complicated time in that we certainly are in development on a lot of things. We were meant to shoot a film in October. It's probably going to be moved to February or March because the actor was meant to do a movie before us, had to shoot in July, so that gets pushed to October, so we get pushed to March. So, so we anticipate shooting 3 movies in sort of spring of next year to summer of next year. There are, with independent financing, there are complications these days with the insurance. UK has been ahead of the game with the government stepping in to guaranteeing insurance, insuring productions. America doesn't have that. From what I understand, Canada is looking at doing that. One of our movies shoots in Canada, another one shoots in Berlin and Budapest. So we will be shooting outside of America a fair amount. But it is, listen, these are complicated times. We thought we had it under control in California, and things have ticked up quite a bit. There seems to be a kind of a roller coaster ride going on here. We sincerely hope that this will start to subside or vaccines will be found. But their productions are picking up more in Europe, certainly, and we would look to shoot in Europe early next year. I think the idea that we are on hold is a pain for everybody, you know. But we will be shooting in India, we will be shooting in Europe, all of that next year. So 2021 should be a very productive year. We are developing, you know, animation process. There's you know, artwork and things moving forward. There are other things, you know, casting and all of that. You know, Zoom has become, you know, the order of the day. So we keep our fingers crossed and good thoughts for everybody.